MFs, welcome to another episode of Hustle Like You Broke, where we remind our viewers, please do not drink bleach, disinfectant, or other household cleaners. That is not the move. Had an exciting weekend myself. Got to do a first. Waited in line outside the hardware store. Enjoying this new Coronication and all of the new firsts that come with it. Took about 45 minutes to do an errand that would ordinarily take 3, but such is the sacrifice that we make to our families. As always, I'm joined by the amazing Christine Dallas. How was your weekend, Dallas?
It was a beautiful South Florida weekend.
Well, I am jealous to hear that.
Don't
Here
want to
in
rub
Boston,
it in.
it is rainy, windy, and about 45 degrees today. Not amazing. We also have the champagne and caviar of the audio industry, Mr. MF Kyle Hamilton. Please tell us, how were your crunch berries today?
They were crunchy. More crunch, less soggy. But today is a great day here in sunny California. We have about 96 degrees on top of your 45. But moving forward, it's going to be a great day.
That is exciting to hear. A little bit jealous. Also joining us from Southern California, my good brother Banks. Are you still enjoying homeschooling, Brother Banks?
No, I am not.
And thank you for your honesty. So this week, we actually are embarking on 2 new exciting endeavors. The first will be the answer to the question, what is it that we have done to arrive at this point in our careers, right or wrong? I know anyone that's ever attended a music industry conference or panel, spoken at a college or whatever, knows the first question that is usually asked is, how'd you get your start? What have you done to get where you are today? And what do you suggest that I do in order to get there in my career? And I'm glad that we can be answering that for our viewers. I know that is the question that has been most asked of us so far in this brief endeavor. So, jumping right into that. Actually, that's the first thing I should say. The second thing we are doing this week, we will be having our first guests. Very excited for that. And we will be rolling those out with increased frequency. So excited for our viewers to learn more about our associates across the industry. Excited to hear their stories and have them answer questions about their beginnings and what they've done and things they would do to improve the industry as we move forward. So it should be exciting and looking forward to it. So jumping right into today, I believe we agreed the first person to tell us their story would be the amazing Christine Dallas.
Well, thank you, Matt. We'll just give you a little synopsis of not my beginning, but a middle of the way. Actually, I'll talk about the first tour I got on, which was pretty exciting for me. It took me about 10 years to get on tour, however, being the sign of the times and all that fun stuff. But in 2004, I had the privilege of going out with the Purple Man himself, Mr. Prince. And it was the Musicology tour. And it was quite incredible for many, many reasons. I don't even know where to start, but I don't know if you guys remember, that was one of the first times ever someone had sold a ticket with a CD. When you purchase the ticket, all the sound scans were off the charts because he'd basically broken all the records. Because when people bought tickets, they bought the show, they bought the Musicology album. But that's at a different time, and it was a really exciting experience. Just every night, Purple Rain. How much better does it get? Any questions about that, Matt?
I'm just a little stunned and jealous, to be honest with you, Dallas. I didn't know that you'd worked with him. I believe Kyle may have also, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I went to the Purple University for a few months. Well, about a year.
What year was that?
2012. 2012, we did a pretty much 24-hour a day tour. We did a show. We did load in, do a show, watched the show at night, did a post show, like an after show, and then did the same thing next day. I think that was the best money I ever made in my life. I saw more sunrises than I ever seen in my entire life for that year. And it was all money isn't good money. So I say, you know what, I can't do this. This is too taxing on me as physically. So I had to bow gracefully. But it was an amazing experience to go to the Purple University.
Yeah.
I mean, I would only add to that Prince is one of the very few artists I have ever seen, and I've seen him a few times. One of the very few that I can literally sit through front to back every time, and am just absolutely awestruck by his talent. I've heard great things about him. I've heard terrible things about him, but to see him on stage is stunning. It took my brother to one of the shows. He didn't know he was a Prince fan going in. He thought he was just a pop artist who wrote pop songs. And my brother's a heck of a musician himself, and he just came away absolutely floored by the incredible talent that is Prince. So I am jealous for both of you, for that. But Dallas, do us a favor and go back a little before that. Tell us a little bit about your humble beginnings. Let's hear a little more of your story, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, I really started at the bottom, and you learn the hard way, pushing cases and working on a TV show and doing all those fun things, and then decided I couldn't get enough and I need to get more. How much could I get? I weaseled my way into a lighting company, weaseled my way into the electronics shop of the lighting company. But then pretty much found out in the good old years of 1994, females weren't exactly welcomed on a tour bus. And we were kind of like the old days of bad luck and pirate ships. So I realized getting on a tour was going to be a challenge. So I had to figure out how I was going to do that. It took me a while. I did the lighting and the pushing cases and all the fun stuff for a couple years. And then I managed to, a fellow stopped answering the phone. A guy quit his job at a local independent promoter in the city that I worked in. And so I knew those guys, and they were like, hey, would you like to answer the phone? And I was like, not really, but it's a beginning. And so I got in there, and then one of the partners in the firm who handled all the production, he quit about 6 months later and decided that, the independent promoter business was not for him. And so I went to the main guy and I said, what are you going to do? And he's like, I don't know. I need somebody to do production. I said, all right, I'll do it. And he was like, huh? Because again, this is still only 96. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And, if I fail, then I fail. But if I don't, I don't. And we didn't. And that led to lots of exciting shows. And eventually, I think you guys might have heard Bonnaroo, the company I used to work for. We started that exciting event. And and then luckily in good old 2004, finally the moment came. And I got to get on the tour bus and work for one of the greatest artists in my lifetime, if not many. And I found that to be the way to go. The next part was, how do you keep doing it? And I managed to keep on doing it. And here I sit a few years later. But the Prince thing, it was truly remarkable because to be, as Carl intimated, and we all know that when you see him play, it makes what we do all worthwhile. And when you see all the people's reaction to it, it also makes it worthwhile.
So Dallas, I ask, what would you define your favorite moment in your touring career?
Oh, wow. Favorite moment in my touring career. There's so many, when I realize when I think about these questions, I'm like, God, there's this moment and that moment and the other moment. But I think I do know one fun moment was, I think it was 2010. And I was working with Jay-Z at the time. And we were on tour as the opening act to the U2 360 tour. And we were down in Australia. And it was his birthday. And these are one of those things you rarely see. And long story short, I saw one of the most impressive surprise birthday, small intimate birthday parties, where the band U2 came into Jay's dressing room, and all in those days the Rock Boys were the Jay's band. So there were about 13 guys in that, and then Jay, the full main U2 fellas, and a few of us in there, and they wined and dined him and blessed him for his birthday. That was a pretty exciting moment.
Wow.
Yeah, like watching all those, everybody, not everybody, but do shots of tequila, which was the favorite back in those days. And yeah, there were more cakes that night than I've ever seen. It was cake after cake. I remember Jay looking at me at one point being like, "Is that another cake?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're trying to make you fat." Anyway, it was fun. But it was a good one.
Wow.
Yeah. Those magic moments too, squeezed in between the opening act and the headline show, like that was the other part. Then there was a fabulous party at the end of the night, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, that particular moment was pretty exciting.
See, I'm jealous of you guys backstage because I'm out in the house and I never get to partake in any of those parties during the show. See, that's whack.
I'm sorry. We try to bring you out a little something, but it's not easy.
Motherfucker. There it is. So that's a good one, Dallas. Way to get us started. So, Brother Banks, let's jump over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
I was a young child, trying to find my way in society after I came down from the stars. No, I'm kidding. You see, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So, kind of born into the industry. I was raised in a very progressive church. I got my start really in church. I was fortunate enough in the church that I attended that had a lot of engineers that were there that were very, very successful, and they worked in our audio department at the ministry. I also was a PK. I was a preacher's kid, so I kind of got to kind of do my own thing, kind of move around and touch things and figure out stuff. And then people would say, "Hey, let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me take you under my wing and give you some instruction." Um, and that was pretty much kind of what I knew. Once I got behind the console and started really like twisting knobs and playing with stuff and wiring things and learning how to solder and make cables and just all the above. I knew that was what I wanted to do, and I was young. I had to be. God, I was probably like 8. My mom has a picture of me like rolling cable when I was like 7 years old. Rolling XLR cable. But I just knew from that start that I wanted to be in sound and do audio and mix and just be in this great industry. And so, growing up in LA and growing up with these great mentors, I mean, I had one mentor that was an engineer at Disney, and he had worked on several records, with Freddie Perring, with Michael Jackson, and some other stuff. So, I mean, he was a wealth of knowledge. And I had another mentor that, toured with a lot of A-list artists. So he was a touring engineer. I had another mentor that was there that had toured with just about everybody as well, worked for Claire Brothers for years, and was the head of audio at the now defunct Universal Amphitheater in Universal City, and at the Hollywood Bowl and at the Greek Theater. So as a kid, I would kind of just, hang out with these guys, and, my parents, trusted me. It was a different time back then, hanging out with these, adults. But they would take me to their gigs, and at a young age, I'm, climbing up the catwalk to go turn on amplifiers, in the catwalk for Claire Brothers. So a lot of my summers, up until I was an adult, was spent, at these venues in Los Angeles, and taking little short trips if they had a local gig, which was up north or down south or somewhere. So I got to do that, and again, still at my church and doing the thing, and we had a amazing system, and our first was like a Yamaha 1500 mixer, and we had wireless, Shure wireless. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff. Sheila E was one of our members, so I mean, she and her brothers and a lot of other famous musicians like Andrew Goucher. A lot of these guys played at my church. Brent Jones in the gospel industry. A lot of these guys were at the church playing. So I'm at a young age mixing a lot of these people in my church, and making recordings, and then tweaking them and fixing them and all that stuff. So I continued to do that until my adult years, and then doing concerts and stuff like that at a young age. But I got more involved, and I said, hey, I want to take this to the next level. And I kind of told my parents that this is not just a hobby. I want to really do this. And knowing my mentors and the troubled life of a of a touring engineer, it's not always glamorous. And in the early days, it was hard to have a balance. We didn't have a lot of people showing you how to be balanced, or wasn't as we have now technology with FaceTime and being able to video chat with your home and all that stuff. So it was a lot of broken marriages, broken households, and my parents looked at that as a negative, and I excelled in English and history and a lot of different things in school, and I had scholarships to go to a lot of colleges for English. And my parents, looked at me and was like, "You want to do what?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to do this. That stuff I've been doing, and very talented. I'm gifted. I enjoy it. It's a passion." And they said, "Yeah, that's that's not going to work for us." And so I was kind of out on my own. I was, doing my own thing. So I lived in my car for about a month and a half, and kind of struggled to kind of figure out this is really what I wanted to do. And it was kind of a little depressing at points. I was like, hey, should I go and do this English thing, and actually do something that is legitimate, based on society's eyes. This is kind of like a rogue thing, but I was passionate about it. I had a really good friend of mine that from the church as well that kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey man, you can come move in with me. And so I had a place to stay, that was permanent, not parking behind a McDonald's. So I moved in with him, and he was in the industry, and he was an actor, and he did a lot of plays as well, like a lot of gospel plays. And we knew each other, and he knew what I was doing. He was also kind of dibbled and dabbled a little bit in audio, and he basically gave me a lot of gigs in my early days of audio, doing plays, gospel plays, which can be pretty challenging, when you've got a small budget and you have to get creative. And all those times of working in the church, kind of basically gave me a little platform or schooling, can you say? People say if you mix in church, you can kind of make it, make it anywhere. And just getting creative, with a small gospel budget and figuring out how to make the best of a situation where you roll into a city and you don't have everything that's listed on the rider. Getting creative and trying to figure things out. So I did that for a little while, and then finally met another really amazing mentor during that period, who kind of took me under his wing and was like, "Hey, man, you should get some more foundational instruction." And um, I'd already had a lot of credits already in like community college when I was in high school and coming up. So I enrolled in a great program at UCLA. I was accepted already there as an English major, and I kind of just petitioned the department and kind of found my way and found a program that suited my needs. And so I got my degree because I was like, hey, I got to get a degree, got to be legitimate. And then from there, it was really just kind of networking in churches. I left the church that I was, that I grew up in, and started doing, other churches in Los Angeles that were, very large ministries, that had, extensive setups. One church I worked at, occupied the forum for years, and other churches, so it was a full setup, front house, monitors, broadcasts, I mean, full staff. I mean, it was a full-time job, benefits, all that, so I did that for a long time. And through that, a lot of gospel acts would come through the church, and, some of them were members of the ministry, and a lot of them, kind of like, hey, man, I'd love for you to come out and mix the show. So that kind of led to that. So I started, touring with a lot of prominent gospel artists, at that juncture in my life. And gospel artists, they play all over the world, so I got to see a lot of amazing places at a young age playing with, gospel artists. And with that as well, you go out and you meet people and you kind of network with other people and they see you out there doing your thing. And I got some opportunities and some offers to do some other acts. Now, of course, growing up in the church world, you have this whole struggle with your gift and what you're doing, and basically saying, hey, I'm going to use this gift for the Lord's work, and that's always a tell in church of church musicians and people that grew up in church. And same is true for engineers. People say, hey, you're turning around to take Satan's money, and go out and make more money. And that's kind of like the struggle that I had. I had a lot of other opportunities, that were paying me more money, and I was doing less and less of church stuff. And the church stuff took me to like another level. And I got out and started doing, bigger and bigger shows, with bigger budgets, and people really, seeing that, I was passionate about what I was doing and I was good at what I was doing. And that led to me doing more and more shows that are, in the church will say in the secular arena. And a lot of buddies that I started with out in church as well, musicians, they were doing the same thing. So it was kind of like a community as well. Like I kind of had a nice little family to kind of steer me in that way, because I kind of struggled with it, during that period. Am I doing the right thing? Should I just be doing church stuff? Should I just be doing gospel stuff? But I continued to do what I was doing and the path that I was doing and what made me happy. That was one thing I had to realize, that I got to do what makes me happy, and it makes me money. I mean, come on, to be honest. But that's kind of what happened, and one gig led to another gig, and word of mouth, and people knowing who I was and what I was doing and what I was capable of doing. And actually had another buddy of mine that I had met doing gospel stuff and some other things around the industry, that actually introduced me to Kyle. And Kyle definitely, you know
Hallelujah.
Kyle definitely, set me up and put me on some things, that took me to another level. And I'm thankful for him for that. Because it's really all about word of mouth, in this industry, and who you are and what you're capable of doing, and somebody vouching for you. And so I mean, the last major artist that I got, which was Kendrick Lamar, was thankful. I thank Kyle for that, which led to other things. He put me on a lot of big artists and trusted me to do my thing. And so here I am today.
Brother Banks, I didn't know a lot of that. Glad to hear you took Satan's money.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it was a thing that I had to come to crossroads and say, hey, what am I going to do? How far do I want to go? Not saying that gospel is going to, keep you, but I mean, it only goes to a certain level. And I was hungry to go to that next level, and hey, went ahead and took
So
it.
let me ask you, Banks, if you had to do it all over again, is there anything you do different?
If I had to do it all over again, I mean, there's definitely some different routes I would have taken. Um, I kind of sat around for a long time and didn't take that next step. I was getting calls to do other things, and just my convictions were like, hey, I realized that at the end of the day, it's about me. I can sit here and try to please all these other people and try to be the guy that everybody likes, and not ruffling any feathers. But I think if that's something I would change, I would have said yes to more opportunities. I think also I would have learned how to balance things, better. I was, once I said yes, I really stretched myself thin. And, I had some relationships, that I, kind of ruined along the way as far as friends and stuff like that. And, not taking the time out to be a better family person. So I think if I would change some things, I would definitely learn to balance it in the early days. I was wide eyed and gung ho, and kind of just went out there and didn't put a lot of effort into just continuing to be a person who took the time out to enjoy life really too.
I like that. I like that a lot. So Dallas gave us a pretty epic favorite moment. You got one for us too?
Yeah, I mean, there's numerous moments. I think one of the things that really stood out the most was getting to go to the White House, when President Obama was still in office in 2016, his last term. And it was kind of an epic weekend. We came from London with Kendrick Lamar. We were doing some show, and I think it was like Hyde Park or something. And then we came in, flew in to do Essence Festival in New Orleans. And then the next day, we flew out to go to the White House to go perform for President Obama. And that was just an epic thing. I mean, you see the White House, you see this institution of government and, presidents, but you never, I mean, you get the chance to meet them, but not to go to the White House and actually perform. And with a hip hop artist like Kendrick was an amazing time. And that was probably one of the things I remember the most, because it was just I don't know, it was just surreal. I mean, we got picked up from the airport by the Secret Service, and we're rolling through Virginia, because I think we landed in Virginia, and then had to travel to DC. And we're traveling with Secret Service, and we're like talking to him and asking him questions, and his manager's in the back like with a bulletproof blanket over him, because he's we're tired, we had a crazy weekend. And then we get to the White House the next day, and we're kind of just roaming the hallways, just hanging out, just a few of us, like the tech, me and the playback engineer, and we're kind of just roaming the hallways. And everybody's just kind of giving us like the freedom just to kind of hang out and just explore the White House. And uh I think at one point, it kind of got a little bit later, and you know Michelle Obama comes in and is like talking to us, and just so casually, like we're at home. And it was just a crazy experience. Took a picture with the family, and just kind of had like a little like backyard boogie. It was just so chill and so relaxed. And I just remember like wow, this is one of those moments where it's like, yo, I'll remember this forever. I'll tell my kids about it, my grandkids. And it's just one of those experiences that I'll never forget.
That's pretty awesome. Now, Kyle, Banks credits you with some of his early beginnings or his company.
That took me out. That was I did not know that. I'm kind of
You second
emotional.
guessing yourself now? I mean, is it time to go home and rethink your life?
No, I mean, I know I've been blessed, so I know I've always looked out for people, to help them on their journey. But I didn't know that you know, per Chris moments ago was part of his, catapult into the stratosphere of the A-list artist per se. So I mean, that's kind of a I was emotional for him. I didn't know that. Hey, Chris, my man, I appreciate that.
Come on, Kyle. I
You
mean,
did your thing.
anybody that knows you, man, knows that you have a big heart, man. And I credit you with taking me to that next level, man. I mean, it was no bullshit, because I mean, you told me, it's like, hey, like, you ready for this? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And I just remember like you being no nonsense. I was like, yo, man, I appreciate it. So thank you.
Wow. Kyle, keep them tears out of your crunch berries.
Yeah, that will make him soggy.
So, Kyle, why don't you jump right in? Why don't you go next then? Why don't you tell us a little about your humble
well,
beginnings?
well, my beginnings of humbleness started in 1993, and I pretty much began. I started off in the studio. An engineer by the name of Anthony Jeffries took me under his wings and just showed me the ropes. Um, in studios with Gerald Albright, Layla Hathaway, working on one of her on her second album with producer Chucky Booker, and with Gerald on one of his umpteenth albums at the time, the Smooth album that we were working on, and basically, I was also going to engineering school at the same time, so I would finish school and then go hang out in the studio at night, or if my class sessions were in the day, I mean in the night, I would go to the studio in the day, just flip the day. Anyhow, so with I was not going to be a runner slash intern forever at a studio making coffee, cleaning toilets. That just wasn't my thing. I was like, I need to be in the control room, learning what I need to learn, not learning how to make a great cup of coffee, especially since I don't drink it. So I befriended Mr. Jeffries and like, yo, sir, whatever you need me to do, however I need to get there, I just want to be your shadow. How can I do that, and what does it entail? Because I can't just be sitting making coffee, answering phones, expecting to get into the studio, because I saw that as a dead end. So he said, "Yo, you could be my assistant, and I can't pay you, but what you will learn will probably be worth more than money." I'm like, you said more than enough. So long story short, I shadowed him everywhere he went. Did his what where if he had to fly somewhere, I would ask my parents for money so I could meet him out there, and vice versa. So with learning everything that I learned from him, I created my own sound per se. But as I saw the studios, starting to slow down, because I work with a lot of other artists too, but AJ was the one who just kind of, gave me. He opened his book. He didn't say, "Well, I can't teach you that." He's like, "Look, your ears are your ears, my ears are my ears. I can give you the template. Who cares if you do even if you copied me, I'm still you can't mix like me." So that's why I have the same mindset too. I show anybody anything they want to know, because I hear the way that I hear. You're going to hear the way that you hear. You think the way that you think. So no matter what you do, you can only emulate me. You can't copy me, and and so I learned that model from him. But what really got me into the live side of it is, after I finished school, one of my mother's clients was my mom did hair, and one of her clients was a play producer. His name is Marvin Webster. He did a host of gospel plays like the ones Banks used to do. I was like, I didn't realize that we were came from the same lineage with regards to that. You learn a lot on these podcasts. But yeah, my first play that I did with him was a Michael Matthews play called I think it was Love the One You With. One of the little plays that travel all over the place. So what happened was Marvin called his sound company, which was Suter Audio out of Tallahassee, Florida, and say, "Hey, my nephew," he called me. My nephew just graduated sound school, and he's gonna be mixing my play. Show him what he needs to know." And that's how I got my first gig per se on the live work. So they sent me out there, and dealing with lavaliers is real. 15, 20 lavalier microphones on the stage. You had a little small PA out on the Heath console. I had to set up everything. But the beauty of it was, we would sit in a city for 2-3 weeks sometimes, depending on how long that run would last. So there was a lot of trial and error, but I was able to make lighter mistakes and fix it myself without it being a disastrous situation. Because I mean, it was very forgiving, because gospel plays, they didn't have the most. They're not like the plays that Tyler Perry are doing now. Tyler had his production just on a different level from what we were dealing with at the time. But nonetheless, I got a lot of good groundwork, and my foundation was impeccable, because I really got to learn or put into practical application what I learned in school, especially, learning, homing in on your frequencies, which is a situation that I think a lot of engineers of today don't really know from the live standpoint. They're like, oh, just do like this, like that. You turn on a button and it works. They don't know how to really tune stuff. If the computer goes down or your smart fails, they are oblivious to, using their ears. It's almost equivalent to like if you don't have Siri to use for your navigation, you couldn't pull up a Thomas guide and get from A to B. And unfortunately, in today's world, but I got a chance to learn all that groundwork by using my ears and protecting my ears so that I don't damage them. So that was, I would say, from about 95, 96 to like 99, where I ran around doing gospel plays. And so at one point, um, Tom Hare, I'm sure he's long gone now, from Suda was like, the play situation is, they're dying down, and spring is over. It's time to come into summer, do our summer sheds. Are you interested in being a front of house tech for, some of my shed tours? He said, can you fly a PA? I lied. I'm like, of course I can fly a PA. I said, but this is what I need you to do. I need you to send out your crew chief, because every sound company does it differently. So if he shows me your way of doing it, it'll make sense, and then I rock out. He said, well, that makes perfect sense, because everybody's different. So I sent the crew chief out, showed me the ropes on how to fly a PA. 2 days later, I was, the front of house crew chief flying PA for these summer sheds, working with Casey and JoJo, David Hollister, John B, Case. It was it was a crazy tour, because I was like, yo, I'm out here flying PA and a front of house tech slash mixing any random openers that would show up. And I, kind of finagled it, but I did have to learn. I could, and was it safe? Probably not. But I say this, and I've always lived by this mantra: stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And even though I didn't necessarily know, 'cause how would I know how to get training on flying a PA unless somebody taught me? And in those times, you just couldn't walk up into anybody's production and say, "Hey, let me learn how to do this or learn how to do that." It was just kind of you had to. It was almost like a union. You just didn't get brought in. You had to be brought in. Via nepotism or some way of that sort. Um, so I figured it out. Toured around for many years on that circuit, and when I was finally given my I forgot, that same sound company also did the Isley Brothers. So the same situation happened. Do you want to do this? I'm like, of course. The Isley Brothers. You lost your mind, and that's when Contagious was hot. You couldn't tell Ronald Isley anything, especially since he had just teamed up with R. Kelly. Even though everybody hates Kelly right now, at that moment in time, you couldn't tell him anything. He was hotter than fish grease. But I was out there with Mr. Biggs. That's how he was known as in the late '90s, early 2000s, and we rocked out, and I toured with them for about 2-3 years, and then I got a random phone call from Woody Johnston, the tour manager. He asked me, "Are you ready to mix the Isley Brothers?" I'm like, "What do you mean ready to mix? I'm the systems tech. What happened to Dob?" He said, "I didn't ask you that." He said, "Are you ready to mix?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm ready to mix." So I'm thinking I hit the holy grail of monies, because I'm thinking I'm about to make crazy money, this, and that, and the third. I mean, the money was cool, but it wasn't what I was thinking. But nonetheless, the fact that I was now the front of house engineer for the Isley Brothers, that took its toll. And from the Isley Brothers, it went to, mixing more current pop artists, from Avant to Mary J. Blige. Actually went from Avant, then Mary J. Blige, because we opened for Mary and I was mixing Avant. And one day After being out the road for a minute, then Mary's tour manager inquired about if I was available because they had an opening, and I took that gig and I ran with it for many years. And it went from Mary to a host of other people in between. Like who could have been? It was probably Rihanna shows up within that time frame. I worked with the Purple Man in that time frame. Um, did oh my gosh, it's been, I would say this, it's been an incredible roller coaster ride, so to speak. But I will say, as far as my career choice, I feel that in 27 years of doing this, I don't feel like I've really worked because I've enjoyed every minute of it. Now, some days are harder than others, just for whatever reason, but wherever curveball is thrown our way. But it's been, you know, epic, to be able to work with like Janet Jackson for many years, to be able to work with Pharrell Williams. Um, wow, Lionel Richie for many years. Um, Layla Hathaway, Angie Stone, your Stevie Wonder, your to be able to mix, people with the likes of Usher, it's been a blessing to say that I've been on these guys, direct payroll, and not saying, oh yeah, I've worked with them in a festival, and you're really not working for them, but to be on their direct payroll and to have conversation and call them up if there's an issue, and have conversations with them. Be like, yo, I've really made it in the industry. When you're coming up and growing up, all your friends are saying, man, what do you want to do? Well, I want to do this, man. You better play football, leave that music alone. You would never amount to anything in the industry. And then to see those same people now, when you randomly at a concert, like, yo, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm about to meet you, about to listen to my show. Oh, you still doing that? Well, yeah, it's not that I wasn't doing it. You guys just said I was never going to do it and never amount to anything. And that's what people typically say to you in this industry, especially trying to come up, and your friends, your closest people who should be your, support system, will be the first ones to tell you, boy, you better do something else. You ain't never going to do that. That's out of your league. So I'll say all that to say, at the end of the day, my takeaway for all this and for what I have to say to anybody upcoming is, you have to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, and keep them haters close to you because they will always force you to work harder and not smarter.
Wow. So that's your advice. That's your advice
I
for the
like that.
future, Brother Hamilton.
That's my advice, man. If you don't stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Because every situation that I got myself into, that I was handed to me, was me being quick on my toes and always being ahead of the curve, so I didn't get caught with my pants down. No matter what I was asked, if I didn't have an answer in that moment, nobody said you had to answer it right then. But but can you give me a tangible answer within a reasonable time? And if it makes sense, let's move forward. But if you be like, I don't know, okay, I don't know, we'll have you sent home. Or let the situation pass you by. And if you're not ready to grab a hold, and everybody has a moment of, damn, I don't know it. Let me get back to you. That's not a bad answer. But come back with an answer that will give you results.
It's good advice, man. It's super good advice. So what
And I think you're right, Kyle.
I was going to
But
ask, just I mean, out of everything that you've done, all the people that you've toured with, I mean, the experiences, the places, what's the most memorable moment out of everything?
Well, I would say the most memorable moment that I have in touring would be, and this happens to go back to P University with Prince. When I was initially called by him, and I thought somebody was playing on my phone. Um, I hung up on him. I didn't think it was really him.
You hung up on Purple Man.
Have
And
we all done that maybe once or twice?
and he called me back, and I was like, "Oh man, I can't believe I did this." And the funny thing is, he just always talked in that monotone, no matter how excited or how pissed off he was. He never yelled. Always kept a monotone, and it was even it was still just that crazy. Like when I went to Paisley Park for the first time, and I was just sitting there talking to him, and I'm saying, I'm really talking to Prince, and I know what to say because he would ask me questions, and I'd be like, yo, this, and this, and he would reply, I didn't ask for that. I said, well, I was told this. He said, well, if you didn't hear me say it, I never said it. So I'm like, yo, am I getting mind fucked right now? Because I just met you. I was told what you asked for by your production people, and you tell me you didn't ask for it. What am I going to use? I'm like, okay, let me get back with you. I came back and I said, I'm gonna just do me. I ordered XYZ, and we did what we did. And that's why I always say, look, if I walk into any situation, regardless what it is, if somebody got fired, I don't know about who got fired. I know I'm coming here to do a gig, and I'm not going to use somebody else's gear because somebody got replaced or any of that sort. This is what I need. These are my tools. If you can't accept what I want, then I guess you need to hire somebody else. I'm not going to inherit anybody's gig and work on some shit that's not part of my tool belt. And a lot of people would just get a gig and use whatever tools are given to you. Like that's like somebody asks you to paint a painting, a Picasso, and your canvas has a hole in it, and they want it to be perfect. You can't do it because you already set me up to fail. So so again, stay ready so you have to get ready, and always be true to you, and don't let nobody just tell you anything, and just suck it up and just run with it. Because you, at the end of the day, when you get fired, that person who just say, "Yeah, I guess you better do that," is gonna be the one taking your gig.
Yo, I think your most memorable moment was definitely a teaching moment as well, man. that's that's wild. Speak up for yourself. Definitely make sure that you're comfortable with what you're doing. I think that's awesome, man.
Yeah, that was my path to where I am today. And while we're on this podcast together, if it wasn't for all these moments, we wouldn't be here.
This is true.
Man, well, I'm kind of mad that I got to follow that, actually. Dallas, what did you want to say first, please?
No, I just think it's very valuable, some of the points that Kyle made as he's talking, which, the whole idea that every opportunity could lead to another opportunity, I think, and the fact that, back in the day, like you said, you might have had to fib a little just because you were trying to take advantage of the moment. And I think that's huge. And I think that's a big part of once this thing gets in you, this is what happens, right? And this is what makes you successful because of the integrity that you're keeping. Like you haven't just learned these tools, but now you recognize, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves is, like you mentioned, when somebody wants you to work on some other disaster, it's like, I'm not going to fix the other guy's mistake. I'm going to do it my way, which is the right way with the tools that I use.
This is true.
I think that's really important.
Yep.
And very true.
Also, one other thing too, I have to say in closing. I know I was long-winded, but you got to remember when you guys out here doing shows or whatnot, band members included. When y'all here rocking out, you don't know who's in that audience. You think you're just playing for the patrons, but in actuality, every gig has an expiration date. So technically, you're auditioning for your next gig, whoever that person may be in the audience. You'll be amazed how many times I've gotten new clients just because, yo, man, your show sound amazing. Can we talk? What's your rates? We have a new schedule coming up. How much longer are you gonna be on tour with this person? Yo, that's your thing. You are auditioning. That's why I say never get too comfortable out here in these shows, because everything you're doing, whoever artist you with, has an expiration date. And your people listening to your Today show is the person you're auditioning for, who is your new client. And that also tells them what your rate may possibly be, because they're like, yo, he's out here working with Janet, Rihanna. He ain't gonna be cheap. But if they inquire, That's your resume right there. So don't sell yourself short out there. Rock out because you are auditioning for your next gig.
That's why always be nice to the opener because you may end up working for
It's
him.
true.
Yep. Today's opener is
True.
tomorrow's headliner.
Uh-huh. Yep.
The truth. Well, Kyle, that was a great story. Again, I'm not quite sure how I can follow that. I'm pretty sure I will be much more brief, though. So I guess I'll just roll with mine. I mean,
Sure. Are you ready, Matt? Because we're interested. We want to hear what you have for us.
And I doubt if it's brief.
I doubt if it's brief too.
I'm not known for my brevity.
No, not really.
Perhaps not. Well, I mean, my humble beginnings start out here in the Boston area, and I've been here my whole career. It's only in recent years that I've effectively become bi-coastal back and forth between here and LA. So the first piece of advice, which I'll come back to later, is it doesn't matter where you are. You can make it. There are people there. There are radio stations. There are record labels. There are bands. There is everything you need right there in your backyard to get yourself started. And I grew up in a musical family. I was a trumpet player. I dabbled on the bass, very poorly, mind you. But I loved jazz. I played jazz. I was a little combo, and I always knew that I was going to be in music. I always knew there is nothing else that I have ever done, and there is nothing else I ever wanted to do. Um, at the same time, I still like to joke that I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up because I've done a lot of things. I will do a lot more. And where I land, where I end up, it's definitely not where I started. Um, and I don't necessarily know where that will be. I'm just going to have fun along the way. So when I came out of college, I got a job working for a small record label, actually an internship at a label called Ryko Disc USA. This was back in '96. And at the time, they were known as the first CD-only label. This was revolutionary. They did not produce cassette tapes. Young people today don't know what those are, but Rykodisc was the originator of the jewel box, as I understand it, and that was a thing as CDs were coming up, and they had catalogs. That was their claim to fame. They had the Bowie catalog, they had the Frank Zappa catalog, but I tended to work in their jazz division. They had a subsidiary called Gramavision, and they worked with Medeski, Martin, and Wood, and a bunch of other cool jazz combos that I kind of dug. But along the way, I got an internship for a friend who was also working or looking to get into the music business. She'd been in New York, interned for the original Jon Stewart show on MTV, came back to Boston, didn't know what she was going to do. I got her an internship. A few months later, she moved over to a boutique agency in the Boston area. And soon after, as they were growing, she recruited me. So that's another piece of advice is always, as I believe, Kyle, you said, and Banks, you alluded to, that those relationships you make, those will lead to future employment opportunities. You take care of somebody, they take care of you. So I moved over to this boutique agency and I worked a commission-only gig. And frankly, for the first couple of years, it kind of sucked. I was touring regional bands and making very little money, bartending 50, 60 hours a week on the side just to really, earn a living. And I did that for a long time. But those bands led to other bands, led to bigger bands, led to national bands. And I moved from one boutique agency to another. And this other agency, they actually specialized in booking colleges. They booked the talent, they produced the show. And there are a lot of agencies out there that do that nowadays, but at the time there were only a few. And they were really production focused, which I learned later on I was very fortunate for. I didn't love the booking of the colleges. I enjoy it for what it is. I enjoy booking shows and producing events and what have you. But I learned early on from the manager of G Love and Special Sauce. His name was Jason Brown. And he and I were working together on one of G Love's side projects at the time called Princes of Babylon, really cool funk outfit out of Philly. And he told me there's no ownership in booking colleges. There's no loyalty in that. There's no long-term contracts. There's no future there in the long run. What are you going to do with that? And that kind of stuck with me for a long time. But I caught a break a couple years in where a company called Fenway Sports Group, a guy named Mark Lev, called up and said, I've got this client, Verizon Wireless, and they're looking to expand outside of sports. And they're interested in colleges. Do you think you can do something? And for me, that was an opportunity to kind of bridge the gap between booking tours and booking colleges. And so I essentially became the first guy in the industry whose sole business was focused on routing national college tours. And Verizon was kind of a crazy experience in retrospect. I didn't think about it at the time, but we were product testing things like advancements in text messaging and introducing ringtones and things like that. And that kind of led the added element of sponsorship and activations to go with the booking of the college tours, and really gave me a niche and led to other tour series. And there were several. But the one I will mention is actually a 501c3 organization called Reverb in a series called Campus Consciousness. And I mention it because we're actually going to have one of the founders of Reverb, Adam Gardner, on the show in one of our upcoming episodes. And I look forward to talking to him more about that and reminiscing about some of our early tours. But at the time, he was using Campus Consciousness as a vehicle that his band toured behind. He played in a college-oriented band called Guster, and they would add Campus Consciousness on the back of their tour and bring that to college campuses, talking about socially conscious issues, environmental issues in particular. And I went to him after years of doing these Verizon tours, and I said, what if the model was Campus Consciousness is front and center, and the band becomes what comes with it, as opposed to booking the band and then telling schools they're going to get Campus Consciousness? And we went on a run. We went on a good run of booking some big tours. And for me, it was a heck of a way to learn, because I was putting together the packages with the agents and managers, figuring out the right support. I was booking the tours myself. I was handling all of the production, finding the sound, the lights, the video. Some of these artists, and I'll rattle them off in a minute, but some of these artists at the time hadn't really booked or carried their own production before. I kind of found a niche between coming out of clubs before going into arenas. And so in a few cases, we were their first time out there carrying production. And I was production managing some of them, and I was doing anything that was required in order to make these tours a success. Because to me, the benchmark for success initially was just wanting schools to want Campus Consciousness or Verge or Recess, as some of these other tour properties became known. And people wanting to book my tours and calling me and saying, what are you doing next? Let's get a date on the calendar. And years later, all of these sponsored tours, of course, helped me on the Kendrick Lamar Damn Tour when Nike was a sponsor, because I really did have a good understanding of those activations. And that was sort of cool to be able to remember how we did it way back when and apply it on a much more national level. But the artists we worked with, I mean, I like I say, I got on a run. I booked Drake in 2010 on 8,000 capacity venues. And that led to Wiz Khalifa, which led to J. Cole, Mac Miller, Lil Wayne, Chance the Rapper, Kendrick Lamar, Janelle Monáe, Chainsmokers, and it just kept going. And over the course of 6-7 years, I booked 30 tours with all of these different artists. And the best part, as it turned out, wasn't just that the colleges wanted me to book them. and book future tours with them. The best part was that a number of these artists asked me to stick around and work on their side. So I got to work with Wiz Khalifa and Mac Miller and Kendrick Lamar. And that led to larger relationships over time where all of a sudden I was handling all of the tours with TDE, Kendrick, SZA, Q, etc. And then 88 Rising, the Asian hip hop and pop collective record label management company, who have incredible roster of international artists, and producing festivals for them in LA and Jakarta, Indonesia, where I was when this whole coronavirus became a thing. And we literally flew home the day we were supposed to be loading in. We were 3 days in figuring out all the logistics and the plans when we got the call. Yeah, this one's coming down. You can go home now. But yeah, TDE and 88 and Full Stop Management and a number of other individual artists and clients, tour directing, production managing, sometimes doing the creative design, and that's all led me to where I am today. So that's kind of the short version of my story, and I just love that I've had the opportunity to work with these artists, to work with these brands, to work with great people like Kyle and Christine and my brother Banks, and there it is.
So, Matt, what would you say? You feel like you've given us your advice, your best advice for those that coming behind you?
I mean, I'll give one more. I'll give one more, and this is a little cliche in light of our topic, but I've always subscribed to that philosophy: think like a millionaire, hustle like you're broke. And as an independent, working for myself, trying to earn the respect of all these clients along the way, that's been critical for me. Nobody's come along and offered me a big salary to go work for them. The couple of times that I've toyed with that or talked to clients about that, I've actually decided, nah, I'm good. I'm going to keep doing my own thing. And what does that mean? It means think big. It means believe in yourself. It means take calculated risks. Excuse me. It means be relentless. And working with TDE in particular, Top Dog, for all his success, tells his staff to hustle like you broke all the time. And I really, he and I align on a lot of our thoughts and the way we approach business. And I really respect that about him because, I mean, what hasn't TDE done at this point? But Top subscribes to that philosophy, and so do I. And I think that is, the only way to succeed in this business, because so many of us are working for ourselves, trying to figure out that next gig, looking at the situation that we're in right now, figuring out what's next, not just being complacent, but, figuring out how we're going to come out of this better, how to do things different, how to improve upon the foundation that we've created. And, for me, I'm using this time to build new alignments and explore artist management possibilities. And I'm enjoying this podcast, and I've launched a boutique merch company. And, it's all about looking to the next thing and being prepared. Kyle, what was it said about being prepared? What was that line you said?
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
There it is.
Well, and lastly, Matt, what would you say after having been on the club circuit as well as the large touring circuit? What would you say your best moment is, your favorite moment?
Man, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I feel like I probably don't have nearly as many as Kyle right now. A little intimidated, but part of me wants to say, anytime I've been on the set at SNL, I've had the privilege of doing that a number of times, and SNL is pure magic. From the perspective of a tour director, of a production manager, of a part-time creative, of somebody who deals with logistics, the movement of all those pieces, the transitions, the personalities, their changeover. People don't understand how small that space is. So that's definitely up there. But I got another that I'd actually going to say is my favorite. And Brother Banks, you were actually with me for it. So I guess your Obama experience may eclipse that, at least in your mind. But for me, it was more of a weekend. It was the craziest weekend of my life. And it was on the Damn Tour in 2017. And it was anticipation of the MTV VMAs, where we lit people on fire. And yeah, I mean, that was wild. And I was not the creative or even a part of that creative process at all. I take no credit for that. But to bear witness, to be on the stage, to see that happen was stunning, frankly. And that whole weekend was just wild because Friday night we were at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. And as soon as that show came down, Kendrick and A-Party, the band, myself, and Chris went directly to Teterboro, jumped on a PJ, flew to LA, slept for a few hours, and went to VMA rehearsal. And that rehearsal, we saw people get lit on fire for the first time. And we ran our show 3-4 times. We'd have run it more, but as it turns out, when you light people on fire, they need to cool down for a while before you can run it again. And so we ran this 3, 4, 5 times, and we didn't get through the performance at all. And we were the opener of the show, so there were so many other acts that needed to go after us. And we, the Kendrick camp, couldn't stay at, was it Staples Center? Was it Forum? I think it was.
We're at the Forum.
We were at the Forum. Okay. We couldn't stay all day because we actually had to get to Monterrey, Mexico for a festival that night where we...
Hold on. Wasn't the hurricane going on too at that time?
I don't...
Yeah, there was a hurricane where half the crew couldn't make it.
But we did run into you
I remember we
in
had like
Monterey. So we landed in Monterey and we were whisked through customs and we got into the bulletproof cars because the promoters had scared us into believing that bad shit happens in this region. So we got into our bulletproof cars and we pulled up behind the festival and we cut it pretty close to showtime because we got to the festival and security brought A-Party to their dressing room. And Dallas, you met me there. And I'm trying to remember who our fill-in production manager was, who walked me up onto the stage. And it was one of those ping pong stage setups where they're both main. And it was an A-B, back and forth. And Weezer was on the other side. And I walked up to the middle of the stage, and our stage was completely dark. But the entire audience was right in front of us, staring to my left, their right. And I heard Weezer launching into Beverly Hills. And I'd sing it, but my voice is terrible, but I distinctly remember it. And then you walked me back and you showed me the production office and I saw the dressing room and security showed me the path from dressing room to stage and boom, it was go time. Kendrick went on. We did the show. Fireworks went off after, I believe. I think it was raining. Perhaps there was some hurricane conditions. But honestly, Dallas, you probably remember that day in Mexico better than I did. Because before the audience was done clapping, we were half a mile down the road. We were on our way back to the jet. We flew back to LA. We slept for a couple hours and we went right back to VMA dress rehearsal. Where again, we ran that dress 3-4 times, lighting people on fire, having to extinguish them, wait until they cool down, and doing it again. And the crazy thing was, we never got through it. We never got through it in rehearsal. So everybody was a little on edge. Like, is this actually going to work? We were opening the show, and we never got through our performance. And worse, we almost killed at least one person. I remember the swordsman who got lit up, and the choreographer told him, now stop at one point and just hold that sword up and face Kendrick. Well, what happens when you stop and you're on fire is you become engulfed in flames and you cannot breathe. So this guy was suffocating and they had to put him out. He called for help in the middle and we had to stop the run through and they had to put him out with a fire extinguisher and cut a hole in his mask and stick a straw into his mouth just so this guy could get oxygen. But we still did it. I mean, we did it anyway. And that night, amazingly, it worked and we pulled it off and we didn't kill anybody. And to me, that was probably the craziest moment that I've ever had. And the funny part about it, of course, was we were the show opener. So 5 minutes after our performance was over, we were in a car on our way back to the hotel, never saw the rest of the show, didn't fucking care. We were just glad that we didn't kill anybody and that our show worked. And the next morning we were on a plane to Charlotte, North Carolina and finished the tour.
Damn.
You forgot we came off of a 5 in a row.
I mean,
Details.
Damn.
yeah.
So there it is. That is my moment, and those are our stories. So I hope everyone out there appreciates where we're coming from, and we look forward to engaging guests in the next few days and coming back to you and hearing their stories and learning where they got their start and what advice that they have and all the great things they're doing. And until then, we will continue to hustle. We hope you do too. We appreciate everybody. And thank you. Good night.